So we're going to read the rest of Faith, Hope, and Ivy June, um, chapter 2. It was called spring vacation in other parts of the country, but mud vacation here in Thunder Creek. The highway that bypassed the valley was paved, but the narrow roads that bypassed oh, but the narrow roads branching off it were dirt. When the rain came, creeks and roads merged in places to become mud, then soup. But all Coal Mine Road, which was asphalt so that the big trucks didn't get stuck. 20 or more came down that road in a single day. Ivy June stared at the big calendar on the wall beneath the classroom clock. There were pictures of Egypt for every month. The picture for March was the pyramids, golden as the sand around them. The only connection to Kentucky that Ivy June could see was that the pyramids must have seemed like mountains to people who lived in the desert. To the people of Cumberland Gap, the huge formations that rose from the earth around them didn't seem just like mountains, they were. Shirley Gaines was studying the map rolled down in front of the blackboard. The assignment had been to plan the routes that Ivy June would take to Lexington if she went by road, by air, and by water. The students were to name the airport nearest to Thunder Creek and the series of rivers and roads leading north, to determine which roads were even possible, and to figure the cost of going all three ways. Ivy June watched in amusement as her friend traced a winding blue water line with her finger. The middle fork turned and twisted so that Shirl was practically standing on her head as she followed it. By the time her finger got to Bettyville, she was off course and heading for Greyhawk. Shirley, you missed a turn there somewhere, and you're bound for Tennessee, Miss Dixon said. And Cheryl ever caught up, whirled herself around and pretended to paddle as fast as she could in the opposite direction. The class roared. Best friends, Ivy, June, and Shirley, were sometimes mistaken for sisters. Same high cheekbones, same gray eyes, a bit on the squinty side, Shirl's in particular. Same blondish brown hair, strong arms, and skinny legs. But it was Ivy June who was going to the student exchange with Buckner Academy near Lexington. And if Shirl was envious, she covered it with antics at the blackboard. To Ivy June, it seemed as though this last day before mud vacation was a bit more about the exchange program than she would have liked. She was proud but embarrassed by all the attention. The worst thing you could be here in the mountains was a swelled head, next to being pregnant without a husband, maybe. In 7th grade social studies, the topic was stereotypes. Miss Dixon, who taught 3 subjects, asked anyone if they could think of a stereotype for the bluegrass people of Kentucky, the horse people. Stuck up and snotty, said Cheryl, again to laughter. Rich and spoiled, said Fred Mason. Everyone drives a Mercedes and owns a swimming pool. Ha, said Donald Coates. Everyone owns a racetrack. More laughter. Ivy June, said the teacher, can you give us a stereotype? They think their ideas are the best 'cause their granddaddy was Thomas Charles Harrison Caldwell, the third or something, Ivy June said, knowing she'd had to write this down in her journal. The class laughed some more. Every single thing she thought and said almost had to go in that journal. Her only consolation was that Catherine Combs had to do the same. Miss Dixon only smiled. Luke, she continued, what about you? And the large boy in the frayed sweatshirt answered, "Everyone's a millionaire and don't even know how to cut his own grass." "Well, we'll see what Ivy June has to tell us when she gets back," Miss Dixon said. "And of course, we'll get to meet the girl from Buckner Academy ourselves." Ivy June felt a touch of sympathy for Catherine Combs just then, coming here with all that said against her. But it was Luke's remark that rang in her ears. Last summer, Luke Weller and his brothers had to get up at 5 o'clock 6 days a week to cut grass for a lawn company up north. No vacation at all. And Ivy June truly believed that if anything happened to Papa while she was away in Lexington, it was because of what she had made happen to Luke Weller's dad. At 3 o'clock, Ivy June thrust her arms through the straps of her backpack and glanced furtively down the hall, hoping that Jimmy Harris might come along to tell her goodbye. The 8th graders usually kept to the other end of the building, and this day it was no exception. Ivy June wondered if she only imagined that his eyes followed her in the cafeteria, and that when he did happen to meet her in the hall, his smile seemed especially friendly. But Miss Dixon was coming down the corridor instead, the sleeves of her pink sweater pushed up to the elbows. It was the one teacher in middle school who truly looked good in jeans, Ivy June thought. Miss Dixon smiled as she tucked an envelope into the side pocket of the backpack. "The teachers wanted you to have a little spending money when you go to Lexington. It's not much, but it might come in handy." Ivy June didn't know if it would be more polite to accept or to refuse it. "Well, thank you," she said, surprised. "You didn't have to." "No, but we wanted to," Miss Dixon said, giving Ivy June's arm a squeeze. "After all, you're an ambassador, remember?" Ivy June gave her a shy smile. "Thanks a lot," she said. On the bus, she slid in beside Cheryl and put her backpack on the floor between her feet. "What was Miss Dixon saying to you?" Cheryl asked. Ivy June tried not to smile. "Called me an ambassador." "Huh. I've called you a lot of names in my life, but I never called you that," Cheryl joked. She dug in her bag for a small pocket dictionary and thumbed through the A pages. "Ambassador," she read. "An official envoy, a diplomatic agent of the highest rank." She turned to Ivy June. "It means you stink." "Does not." "Does." Cheryl flipped through the pages to R and looked up rank, then held it out for Ivy June to see. "Offensive in odor. Offensively gross." Ivy June laughed and gave her a shove. "Anyway," she said, unzipping the pocket of her backpack, "she gave me an envelope." "Yeah? A going-away card? Bet there's a $10 bill," she said. Ivy June took out the envelope. She found a congratulations card inside, along with 2 20s. Shirley whistled. Ivy June could scarcely believe it. "With every good wish for a remarkable journey," the message read, and all the teachers had signed it. "Wow, 2 weeks in Lexington and 2 20s besides?" said Cheryl, this time letting the envy show. "You should have put your name in for the exchange program," Ivy June said. "Might have been you who was going." "Yeah, but last thing in this world I'd want is one of those academy girls staying with me for 2 weeks. After I got back," Cheryl told her. And Pa wouldn't hear of it, which meant that she tried. The fact was that when the invitation had come from the Buckner Academy for girls to participate in a 7th grade student exchange, the teachers at Thunder Creek Middle School had decided that any 7th grade girl could submit her name, but she had to bring a note from home saying that the family was able and willing to. take on a guest for 2 weeks. Ivy June had supposed that at least half the 7th grade girls would turn in notes the next day, but at the end of the week, only 6 families had said they were willing. After a teacher's visit to each of those homes, the names had been placed in a coffee can and shaken around. The principal herself had drawn the winner name, Ivy June Mosley. As the bus bounced along the pockmarked road that rimmed Parsons Gap, Ivy June looked for signs of spring in the still desolate landscape. The state road led up into the mountains, where all roads leading off it were even narrower. Like the limbs of a tree, there were branches off branches, and most of them were wet and rutted. The bus stuck to a main route. At each stop, its passengers had to hike the rest of the distance home themselves. White, leafless birches stood out like skeleton trees, their bones spread-eagled against a backdrop of pine. At the end, "You Meet God" was carved into a wooden post, almost obscured by the brown vines of kudzu that covered tree and bush as far as Ivy June could see. One day the kudzu looked like wires strung out over the landscape, and the next it would be green and leafy once again. As the bus maneuvered a switchback, Trill asked, "What time do you leave tomorrow?" "Papa's driving me to Hazard at 11. That's where the academy folks will pick me up," Ivy June told her. "Scared?" Trill asked, her squinty eyes studying Ivy June closely. Okay, so this is page 10. We will cover the rest of chapter 2 later, and thank you.